Board of Education meeting. Thursday, October 24th, the Board of Education makes available at least one current copy of the Open Meetings Act, which is posted on the west wall of the meeting room and accessible to members of the public. Start off with approval of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the agenda as presented.
Do I have a motion and a second?
Second.
Second by Eric. Your votes, please, to approve the agenda. We'll do a roll call vote.
Yep, I'll do it. Lisa? Yes. Brandon?
Yes.
Eric Book?
Yes.
Janet? Yes. Doris?
Yes.
Eric Trusty?
Yes.
Charles?
Yes. All right, motion passes. Next up is public forum comments. Seeing that we did not receive any cards for public forum, we will go ahead and move on to the action portion, which will start with approval of the resolution to increase the 23-24 tax request by an additional 6% or other maximum amount above the base growth percentage as permitted by law.
Nebraska legislature enacted several measures this past legislative session, including LB 243 to adjust public school district revenue and finances, and whereas LB 243 generally limits a public school district's property tax request authority, subject to limited exceptions, and whereas LB 243 includes an exception to generally allow a school district to otherwise exceed the default property tax request authority if at least 70% of the Board of Education votes in favor of the increased request, and whereas a Board of Education of a school district with an average daily membership of more than 471 students, but no more than 3,044 students, may increase its tax request by an additional 6% above the base growth percentage, and whereas the daily average membership of Beatrice Public School District number 340015, also known as Beatrice School District number 15, is more than 471 students, but no more than 3,044 students, and whereas due to student and staffing needs and the need to maintain its budgetary obligations, the Board of Education of the school district hereby desires to increase its base growth percentage by up to an additional 6% or other maximum amount as permitted by law, and whereas public notice of this possible increase was published in a legal newspaper of general circulation in the school districts at least 1 week prior to this board meeting. Now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to Section 5 of 2023 Nebraska Law 243, at least 70% of the Board of Education of this school district affirmatively votes to increase to the school district's overall property tax request authority by up to an additional 6% above the base growth percentage or other maximum amount as permitted by law. The superintendent or designee is hereby authorized and directed to take any action consistent with this resolution to ensure that the school district's overall property tax request complies with this resolution.
Okay, thank you, Doris. We have a motion with the resolution. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Charles. All right, we will start with Mr. Alexander.
Okay, so a quick review. As we talked last time in discussion at the regular meeting about the impacts of LB 243 on Beatrice Public Schools, the resolution is required by law to be read in order to make everything on where it's supposed to be in legal statute. But really what it comes down to is hitting the key highlights of what all that means. So we'll go on to the next slide. And you've seen these before, but just as a quick review, LB 243 was passed in this past legislative session, and basically what it is it's a focus on the general and building fund property tax authority of the school district, plus the additional board-approved property tax authority. The key highlights of it, as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, LB 243 creates the third cap on school districts. Currently we have a levy lid and we have a spending lid, and the levy lid is in state statute. The spending lid, or certified budget authority, is set by the Department of Education through the TIOSA formula. But this creates the third cap, which really it is a cap on the ability of the school district to pursue revenue from taxes, so it's a tax authority cap. It's called a soft revenue cap by Senator Breezy that wrote the bill because he understood that schools are all different, and some schools may not need to access anything above that base growth, but some schools may need to, and so they came up with a formula, and on the left-hand side in the blue box, that designates how much you can exceed. So LB 243 allows school boards, depending on the size of the school, to vote for an additional percentage as permitted by law, up to whatever your percentage is, and we fall into that second group of percentages there, as noted in the resolution, right there, that 6%, because our average daily membership is between 3,044 to 472 students, so we could access up to 6% more revenue with 70% approval by the Board of Education. Okay, so that's in a nutshell what it's all about. On the next slide, NDE has provided guidance to us and on what foundation aid, which is formerly known as student state aid, how it all has changed and been impacted by this law. So we have pretty clear perspective for the 23-24 school year and the 24-25 school year. That foundation aid will be $1,500 per student. For Beatrice Public Schools, this is the first time in several years we haven't lost money, so we're actually making $5,626 additional dollars for BPS, which in the past we've seen a loss. So the foundation aid was beneficial. In school year 25-26, the foundation aid is designed to be reduced from $900, is reduced to $900 per student, or $600 less per district. So where we start to show concern is 2 years from now, we know that reduction is coming. So we know in 2 years, Beatrice will likely lose state funding. While the funding package by Governor Pillen is nice for the next 2 years, there is a mountain of uncertainty for 25-26 and beyond that. It is questionable if the state can sustain the increased funding of this package. The Education Future Fund and LB 583's 80% SPED reimbursement, which are all packaged together. If the state can't sustain this funding, we ask ourselves the question, where is it that we're going to make up the revenue that's needed to continue to operate our schools? And there's only one place that can be made up, and that's in property taxes. So historically, and history does typically repeat itself, funding to education is the first thing on the chopping block to be reduced when there's a shortfall in state revenue. So why should the Board of Education approve access to the additional 6%? The uncertainty of the legislature and the funding mechanisms after the year 24-25 school year. Like I said, the next 2 years, this year 23-24 and 24-25, we have pretty clear direction on what to expect. 25-26, when that foundation aid drops, we will see a decrease. If we don't ask for the additional authority, we could lose it. We could lose it over time. We could lose it at the start of the next legislative session. We don't know that. Right now, there is no timeline attached to the access to the additional 6%. It protects the base growth in the formula for Beatrice Public Schools because it gets added to your base growth in future years. So that 6% is automatically added to your base growth for future years. In other words, it stays with you unless something changes statutorily at the legislature. Without the additional authority, we tie the hands of future BPS board members meeting the needs of the district, and planning for the future is critical. We know, just like everybody else in the world, we will see increases in our expenses, and 85 to 90% of our budget is tied up in wages. So increases in wages, busing, property insurance, parking lot repair, building repairs, maintenance, vehicle purchases, textbook software. That isn't the complete list of things in the budget preview in the committee of the whole meeting. I will cover even more in depth what we anticipate some of those expenses to be, but we know those things are continually going to go up, just like groceries and gas. We would not have additional funding for a multitude of items if we don't vote to access the 6%. Finally, because you approve it, doesn't mean you have to use it. A board can access 4%, you could access 2%, you could access 3%, 5%, whatever percent you want to. But you're capped at 6%. So how much of that you determine to access or access any of it is dependent upon valuations and what the budget needs are for the school year. The analogy that I've tried to use is it's like an insurance policy for the future. The vote to access the additional 6% is like an insurance policy. It's very similar to what you would purchase for a vehicle. If you have an accident, you have insurance to cover it if you need it. So essentially, on the LC2, the lid computation formula, and you've seen this document from the Department of Education, this is what it means. This is our base growth allowance right here, $15,526,839. That's the base as to what our property tax ask can be. Okay? What that means is if you go down to section D210, that's what the property tax request would be at the base level for the general fund. Notice it says property tax request for the general fund would be $13,351,684. For the building fund, it would be $2,175,151. So that brings you to the total of $15,526,835, which is $4 less than what your authority is for the coming year. That's your base amount. So what all that means in the end is that if we don't vote to access the additional 6%, we essentially have $4 to grow our budget in the next, until perpetuity or until state statute would change. Okay? Because of the last line on section D of the LC2, because of the increase in foundation aid and sped reimbursement, the anticipated tax savings to the public is $1,501,802. Without those bills, especially LB 583 that came through in the governor's package, we would most likely be looking to increase the tax asking that much more. I tried to come up with a way to, I'm a visual person, so I tried to come up with a way to create a visual that would help explain this. And this is kind of what I came up with. And it's very simple, but essentially, that number right there is your floor. That's the base growth amount that the state says we can grow. Anything between that up to that number is the maximum amount that we could grow. So if we were accessing the complete 6%, that would be our tax asking. I don't anticipate that being the case for this year, and I will show you that in the budget preview in the committee in the whole meeting. But that was kind of the analogy I thought that might help create that visual for you in terms of what right now the state says that's our maximum authority. If we choose not to access the additional 6%, we only have $4 to work with in the next however many years, we don't know. That's the maximum amount we can ask for. So that kind of, again, hitting the highlights explains why this vote for the additional 6% is important, and I would answer any questions at this time.
Are those slides available that we can access them after?
Sure. Yep.
And again, I think it's, we need to make sure everybody understands that if we approve the 6%, that, as Jason mentioned, that does not mean when it comes to the approval of the final budget at some point in September, that we will be asking for the full 6%. And that also does not mean that changes our actual tax levy of the $1.05.
Correct.
So that doesn't mean that we're now going and asking for a 6% over the $1.05 levy. One more, I guess, comment or observation is, as you mentioned, the $4, potential difference. I mean, we all know wages are increasing, every expense is increasing, and to be, handcuffed by that amount in the future, could really put the district at a bad spot when we're, you know, especially when we look at our strategic plan of hiring, retaining teachers, not only teachers, but other staff, paras, custodians, maintenance, whatever that may be. We're all going through that no matter what industry you're in, as far as increased wages throughout Beatrice, throughout the state. It's hard to keep up, and that would just handcuff us, and I think we would be in a bad situation.
I would agree with that. I think that's probably one of the most important points in that what the future looks like for BPS. You know, we might say, yeah, we're good this year, but we won't be good in future years if we don't work for it. I think that's a huge concern.
And again, I like the analogy. It is an insurance policy. We may use 2%, 3%. Next year, we may use none of it. But at least it's there. So if we do approve this tonight, Jason, does that mean for the next 3 years, do we have to have the same conversation each year to approve the 6%, or is it good through,
It's good through
as long as state statute doesn't change?
bingo, yep.
Any other questions, comments around?
I know there's gonna be a misconception out there for the people. They're gonna say, see, there wasn't enough money for the new school, they're gonna do this, and they're gonna be using this to pay for the new school. Can you speak a little bit to that, please?
Yes, I absolutely can. And really what I'll do is I'll go back to the third slide, go up to, and focus on, one more, and focus in on item number 5. You know, the new school is budgeted for.
Right,
It's budgeted for in the building fund for the next 40 years.
yes.
That's already been established, the plan is in place, the new school it's already planned for. This is specifically about the general fund more than anything, and that is the increase in wages. I mean, we really are in a wage war with grocery stores, the
Fast
hospital,
food.
restaurants, fast food, you know, everywhere. Bus drivers, you know, we're in competition with truck driving companies that we can't keep up with. So essentially, 90% of our budget is fixed, locked in on wages. And if we can't continue to increase our wages like everybody else is, we won't have people to operate our business. So that's a great point, Eric, and I appreciate you bringing it to the forefront, because it really does come down to those things, that list. And in the budget preview, I'm gonna show you a list that's even more detailed than that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, seeing none, I will take your votes on the resolution.
Brandon,
Yes.
Eric Book,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Doris,
Yes.
Eric Trustee,
Yes.
Charles,
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
All right, resolution passes. Do I have a motion to adjourn the special meeting?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 adjourn.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Eric. Votes?
Eric Book,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Doris,
Yes.
Eric Trustee,
Yes.
Charles,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Brandon.
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned.
Okay, so the next meeting isn't scheduled to start at 6, so we have about 5 to 10 minutes here. We also have guests that will be presenting from ALICAP, and so I'm going to go, I think they just walked in the door, so I'm gonna grab them. Mr. Brown will also be starting off our meeting, kicking off the meeting with a discussion about policy 5103. So we'll have a short transition. If you need to use the restroom, get a break, really might.
Video is still running, and it will continue to run, so just be cognizant of that as well.
We have 3 hours and 10 minutes before our next meeting.
Yes.
I'll be careful with the bad comments.
Yes, be careful with that.
Oh, yeah. just waiting for, I'm looking for a outlet.
I'll
Which
move
there's already-
another chair.
You're all right. You're all right.
There's plenty of chairs.
I'll just,
Yeah. Come on, Mr. Brown.
Did somebody hack your email?
Yes.
I was
Didn't
like,
apply for the
why?
job?
I saw that, I deleted it.
yeah, we're on the day. That's kind of random.
That's kind of what I thought too.
But that was your school email, right?
It was my school email. They went out there with AD in the state.
Thank you. Yeah, you too.
They went out there with AD in the state, and it happened to the AD in Crofton too.
That's why I can't open so much stuff that comes from my school emails, because the bank does not deem the schools
I can't.
absolutely 100,000%
Hi.
secure.
I'm Rhonda. I talked to you yesterday.
I have to
Oh, hi, Rhonda.
my school email, I have to look at
Nice to
myself.
meet you.
I just have, when Dave Cook was here, I just had him forward, whatever comes to my school email, was just forwarded to my home email automatically, but I was like, okay. It made me jump.
Second
I
or
gotta
third
do
one.
that.
My phone was.
I think it was later in the day, so.
Well,
maybe
I got one,
time.
I sent him one, and I said, oh, I'm gonna revise this, I sent him one like an hour ago, or just maybe 3 hours ago.
Yeah.
And then I sent him one like 5 minutes after that and said, hey, this one, Portal is spelled right, so I misspelled Portal.
Maybe don't want that one. So regardless, did you guys, did you bring?
I brought
You're
it.
excited?
So if you want to choose the board representation,
Right.
so this time. I think I should give them this copy.
I don't think I need any, I think I have 9 of these, which means I have one that went, and then, so I have 8 of these, and I have 9 that went.
Oh, well, then you should use
I
the
think
7
I
board
am.
members.
Cool, no.
Just go to second.
No, we were looking at, we might get delayed a little bit, but we're gonna treat it like a lightning delay. 15 minutes. Everyone knows that.
Is on that computer that.
Okay.
I have it now.
Can you go in there and change it? Well, I might have it.
We have the option to go to the classroom and teach help.
So I'm
Well aware of that.
Like Katie said, get option 1 and option 2.
and it's on the header, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not like, yeah, it's not someplace where you just, yeah,
And I would
okay.
let you know, my office is so cold, I'm wearing a pullover and I have a space heater going in my office because it is 58 degrees in there.
Yeah, so it's about right. Where do you want yours?
Every hour.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask you. So we're gonna have to divide that $4 among all the teachers.
And certified staff.
And then I'll grab your signature.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. These are creature of habit. I'm sure you've heard like right now, you clean. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
No negotiation.
Maybe we can.
Keeps me honest.
No, 3 hours and 12 minutes.
Will they post the schedule for Saturday volleyball tournament anyplace?
We'll have it out tomorrow. The coaches have to send me all the recommendations for students. I can tell you what I'm gonna play.
We made it. Nice to see you. Sure, this is Daniel.
Laura and I have nothing to do with it.
We have. What's next Saturday?
That's okay.
No, I'm talking this Saturday.
Oh, what?
Do you want us to stand up there in front of the PowerPoint, or should we sit at this table?
I think whatever.
It's a round, okay, it's round, it is round robin.
Pull those two chairs around one side or the other, or split.
Shoot me a text.
And sit up there, toss them there.
Yeah, because then I don't wanna block it, and then I don't wanna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's with north and.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Lincoln southeast. Miller north south.
We always said we had 10 little girls in our neighborhood, we didn't have families, but we visited. Thank you for those. There's 20 for each
Yeah, they're blessed. I know.
Middle school year, more than high school.
I've been always looking for that on the calendar, and I couldn't find
That's what I thought. I thought it was, thank you.
It is, you guys are celebrating. That's the best one that we. I don't think that. Trailblazer conference.
I just thought it was raised at $4.
Anytime you add you subscribe to it. There's an app.
About 30 seconds. Okay.
But it's done.
Yeah. Because I know that the law school. No. Do I need it? I feel like it's so fun to make my life. Oh, you're gone.
Call to order the Board of Education Committee of the Whole meeting for Thursday, August 24th, 2023. The Board of Education makes available at least one current copy of the Open Meetings Act, which is posted on the west wall of the meeting room and accessible to members of the public. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the agenda as presented.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. First, we'll hear about policy 5103.1, random drug testing for students involved in extracurricular activities. And Mr. Brown, the athletic director, will be our speaker.
So as Mr. Brown's coming up, just a bit of background. This policy that's in place has been here for longer than both of us have been here. So it was implemented, I'm not quite sure what year, but it's been in place for a while. And Mr. Brown has just asked, is this something that we want to continue doing? So I'm going to allow him to cover the details. I said it's a board policy, so something that would have to come to you. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so there's a couple of things like Mr. Alexander said, it's been a long time since we've been through this policy. So I sent out a survey to all of our conference schools and then schools that are like us in the area to see what everyone's doing. Currently, there's 3 conference schools doing random drug testing, including us, and then Crete just starting it this year. So I called with them quite a bit of why their thoughts were, why they started it. And then I also, on the other side of it, we found that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other schools, and LPS is not doing random drug testing. I think from my background, I was with Mr. Suter quite a bit. When it started, I thought there was like a real problem. And so they started it, and I don't know if it's a deterrent or what, but when the schools I talked to, we're spending about $4,000 to $5,000 a year on random drug testing. In my 2 years here, we have had 4 test positive, And the interesting thing about those is 2 of those were not even involved in activities. So the way the policy's written is that when they come in, they fill out, if they're gonna be involved in activities, they have to sign a sheet of paper consenting that they're gonna be tested. To be out of that pool, they have to fill out the paperwork not to be in that any longer. So when they come as a freshman, they fill it out. If they get out of an activity and they do not sign that policy, then they're out of it. Or if they do not sign it, they're still in there. So there was at one point last year where 8 of the 10 people we had in were not even involved in activities. And we can't say, well, you're kicked out because you're not involved because that's no longer random drug testing. So I'm kind of looking at, is the bang with the buck, if it's 1 to 2 students a year, for the $4,000 to $5,000 spending, it's $500 every time they come in, it's $50 per student. It's the same across the board when I visited with Wahoo and Plattsmouth. Wahoo's the exact same way, they get 1 to 2 kids a year. Plattsmouth has not had a kid test positive since 2015. And so they're like, we haven't even thought about kind of going back on it. So I just kind of want to just review and answer any questions. Is this something we want to continue to do within our school building? Is it the bang with the buck? Is it really a deterrent? I can't answer that because if you ask me honestly, I don't think our kids are involved in activities or doing those type of things. I'm sure we have 1 or 2, 3, 4, maybe more. Is it a deterrent because we're doing it, or is it they're just not doing it any longer? So I just wanted to bring it up, the chance of, let's look at it. Are we still want to do this? Is it valuable to our community? Is it valuable to our school system? Or is it something that it kind of ran its course and we need to maybe move on with something else?
So question, and maybe you can't answer this, but if the schools that maybe don't do it, or even the schools that do, even if there is a coach, administrator, teacher has a suspicion on a kid, so they can't even test that? So it would just be suspicion and they would just have to go at that point?
So the way it works is on the first of the month, I get a list of who's on our, so we upload our incoming freshmen to the system, and that goes to a place in Indiana. And then on the first of the month at midnight, I get an email that here's the 10 kids and here's 4 alternates. And so then I keep that under lock and key until the drug testing company gets a hold of me. Then they tell me that this is the date we're gonna come in, and so then we go ahead and do it. Things we're also having happen is, last year, it was the April test, we had a senior come down that was no longer in activities, like, I'm not doing it. And there's nothing really we can do, because, our policy says, if you refuse a test, it means it's gonna be positive, but now we're having kids that are seniors in their 2nd semester, like, I'm just not gonna do it, I'm not out for anything. So it's the pool, I think if we wanna keep it, I think we really look at the policy of how we wanna change that pool, looking at, maybe we have to have these kids fill out this paperwork every single year, or is it something that, there's some work to be done if we decide to keep it. And so that's why I wanted to visit you guys and kind of give you what I've learned through, I talked to Fairbury, got rid of it 3 years ago. Their board decided it was something they didn't want to no longer do, so.
How many students are tested every year?
We test 10 a month. So September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. So we do 8, so we're spending $4,000 a year.
So could that senior have opted out?
They fill out the paperwork, mom and dad fill out the paperwork. It's amazing when kids are like, why am I being tested? I'm not even anything. Like, well, you have not signed the paperwork to opt out.
Yeah.
And I do get phone calls from parents of, why are you testing my child? And
I don't understand, does every freshman that's in an activity fill out the paperwork, or every freshman?
every freshman's in an activity. And so they might do it their freshman year, but if they don't opt out of it, when they quit or are no longer part of an activity, then they're still in the pool.
Or if they start an activity after their freshman year.
Then they get put in the pool.
So I'm not getting why we can put them in the pool if they start an activity, why we can't take them out if they're no longer in an activity.
They have to fill out the paperwork to be out of it.
Do
That's
we
the only
ask
thing
them to fill it out?
We hand it out at the start of the year. It's basically the policy and the opt-in and opt-out paperwork. And so they have the paperwork and they just don't.
Do you get it when you go to the fall sports meeting?
The fall sports meeting. This is something that we collect in the activity office before they can participate.
Seems like it would be to our advantage to be more aggressive about getting those kids to sign that for work. If we wanted to continue it, I don't know, I don't know, maybe,
Have the schools that decided to quit doing this program, have they seen an uptick? No.
I would question how much of a deterrent it is when
That's-
it's all that few students.
right.
The
Right.
randomness of it costs.
And that's what we don't know. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
we don't know that, but
Do you have any idea what best practices are beyond just the schools that you've checked? Is there an alternative to random testing,
it's either they're doing it or
or they don't?
they don't.
And schools that don't,
And from what I've seen, you know, our kids that are in activities, they take it pretty seriously, and I don't know, just from what I've seen, I don't know that they're out really screwing around. I don't know, my opinion.
The two that we had involved in activities that did test positive were, because it really weren't really dedicated in our varsity type athletes or leads into play or.
and I would speculate that students who do consume these products are probably getting into trouble in some other fashion too. And this is not the first time.
What kinds of drugs does this test for?
Ours tests for THC, which is a big one, alcohol, cocaine, heroin, steroids.
There's a panel, it's called a drug panel that you can select. Or
Do
that-
we test for all those things?
Yep.
Yeah, like fentanyl.
We don't test for nicotine, 'cause that's not part of our policy.
So you don't think there's any connection between us doing drug testing and students choosing not to go out for activities because?
I don't believe that. I don't believe there's a correlation.
I think it would be an expression of trust with the students if we stop the random thing, because I can imagine being a bit disruptive for the students and the parents, and if we have that little to gain from it.
And the way it works is, like, if someone tests positive, I don't make the phone call. The company in Indiana does all the testing, makes the phone call. There's a lot of times, like, we can't see lock, there's only been 4, but the 2 that were not involved in activities, trying to get those parents to answer a phone call back. Because if there's a positive, they call and say, okay, what prescription medicine are your children on? Because there could be a situation where that's making this test positive. And then if they can't get a hold, they call me, and then I spend time trying to get a hold of the parent, like, I really need you to call this number. They're like, well, why does it matter? My kid's not involved in activities.
So as long as we've been doing this, we've only had 4?
In my 2 years here.
Oh, just in your 2 years?
Just in
Okay.
My
Okay.
2 years, we've had 4.
Okay.
So if we want to take care of these kids, we may be better off using that money for other mental health, kind of encouragement we want to give for enhancing character.
You know, and I kind of look at it this way, is that we have vape detectors in our bathrooms. We still bust kids for vaping. If they're gonna do it, they're gonna do it. It's,
It's obviously no decision today. Just
No.
right.
They
I
just
just wanted
mainly decision, do we bring it to the board meeting
Right.
to review the policy?
So what percent of the student body gets tested each year?
Oh, boy, off the top of my head, I would probably say,
Small percentage.
what percentage? Well, the 650 kids. And okay, so once they test, they're still back in the pool next month.
Mhm.
You could,
Uh,
you could,
I've had one-
be drawn 8 months in a row.
Yes,
I've had
you
one
could.
girl, we've tested 5 times in my 2 years here. And I've had one girl we did back-to-back months.
You should buy a lottery ticket.
I just went tell her, and she comes down, she's like, Brown, really? Well, I had nothing to do with this, but it's, so yeah, so there's some where we have multiple testers. Like I said, there's one student we've had 5 times.
I think I would encourage putting it on the agenda.
Any other questions, or feel free to call me, or text me, or email me if you have any questions, so. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you guys very much.
Next, we're learning about Alley Cap,
Yep, so,
insurance. Sherry, you're gonna go ahead.
yep, Sherry and Danielle, or excuse me, Sherry and Daniel are here, that's Danielle up there, are here from Alley Cap to talk to us. So I'm gonna ask them to come up to the front, and as they're coming up, I'm gonna give you the brief, and most of you are aware of it, give you the brief overview as to what's transpired. There's two insurance companies really in the state that cover school districts. There's EMC and there's Alley Cap, and we've been a part of Alley Cap with our workman's comp insurance for years, and I can't tell you exactly how many. We have
Since 1990.
1990, thank you. We have predominantly used a local insurance agent here, Jones Insurance, to get our property and casualty insurance. However, this past year, EMC dropped independent coverage insurance agents across the state. We're not the only school that happened to, so it's not a Beatrice thing. It happened across the state to at least a dozen other schools. And so what that meant is we had to go in search for another insurance company that would be able to cover us. And essentially, the only other option is Alley Cap. So I reached out to Sherry, knowing that, and said, our insurance is going to expire on August 1st. Can you help us? And we've been collaborating and working together since the 1st of June essentially is when we got notification that our EMC insurance would be no longer available. And so Sherry's been tremendously helpful in getting us to where we are and getting us covered. And but I asked her if she would come and just kind of give a brief overview as to what Alley Cap is and what they provide. So Sherry, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks for being
Thank
here.
you. Thanks for inviting me. Alley Cap does educational sessions for boards, and typically they're considering joining. They haven't already joined, so this is kind of something that we do pre-deciding to join the pool. But I've been working with the Association of School Boards with their insurance products for their members for going on 40 years. So I've seen it all. I've been around the block. Daniel now came to work with us about 4 years ago, and so now he's sort of the right-hand man. He's doing all of the recording, all the products, all the proposals, things like that. I was involved back in the 80s when the pool formed, and the pool formed because the insurance industry was in an incredibly. No, sure, thank you. Here, I'll just get. You have a copy of it too, if you want to follow along or make notes in your copy. But, so back in the late 80s, workers' compensation was incredibly difficult for K-12 public schools in Nebraska to find. Grand Island found themselves without coverage. So we testified at the legislature along with the cities and the county reps and passed the pooling bill that allowed public entities of like kind to pool together their total cost of risk and kind of treat their exposures like a Boeing or a GE or that sort of thing. So the counties formed in '88, cities formed in '89, and NASB formed the workers' compensation pool in September of 1990. It was just work comp. Beatrice joined 9/1 of '90. So there were several districts that did not have coverage. I think we started with 35 to 38 districts and $635,000. So we chugged along until 1996, and in 1996, we added all lines of coverage to the pool and renamed it the Alley Cap, NASB Alley Cap. So Alley Cap stands for All Lines in a Local Cooperative Aggregate Pool. And back then, we named it the aggregate pool so that school districts could consider all of them aggregating together, and they could take the insurance premiums out of their state aid, out of their general fund budget for the size. So anyway, the decision to pool on the first side is philosophically, school districts came together to figure out how to reduce their total cost of risk. And how they're accomplishing that today is Alley Cap has still a $500 property deductible per occurrence. So if hailstorm goes through Beatrice, you guys pay the first $500. Alley Cap pays the rest. And then we still do not have a wind and hail deductible, which a lot of districts are seeing nowadays, $25,000 per building. You know, that's costing districts quite a lot of money that are still with EMC. So EMC is putting those restrictions, those endorsements on. You could, essentially, you could become an owner of your own insurance company. So there's no, there's no stakeholders or stockholders out there. All the profits that ALICAP reaps go back to the members in the form of dividends. Control the expenses. So the thing about the NASB handles the loss control and the finances and that sort of thing. Daniel and I work at Public Risk Management, do all the insurance, act as local agent for all 189 members. We do all the certificates, auto ID cards, that sort of thing. There's a CPA, Sedgwick does the claims. So by farming all of these different areas of expertise out to various vendors, they keep the expense rate of the insurance company, your insurance company, down to 6%. Nationwide, pooling typically, I was on a national pool board years ago for several years, and the lowest expense ratio for pools across the country was about 12%. And NASB runs this as a lean machine, and they've done a great job. So this last year, we had 6% in expenses, and they declared a $1.5 million dividend back to the members. I think you guys' invoice at 1.5 was about $9,500 off of your work comp bill. We obtain school coverage for every member, so it's just K-12, public schools, what state legislature says you could be liable for, all of those things. So we earmark, kind of tailor-made everything. It's very seldom that we have to tell a district they're not covered. Very unusual.
When you say K-12, do you mean pre-K-12? Does it cover, okay.
I've got K-12.
That's what I know,
Yeah.
and then I just wanted to double
Years
check
ago,
that we were covered
all
for
the
the
way
pre-K portion.
Infant to 12, yeah.
There we go.
And so then the ALICAP is managed by NASB, Public Risk Management, the Loss Control Ambassadors, which I'll tell you a little bit about, and Sedgwick, they're the claims management services. So some of the advantages, enhanced coverages through group purchasing. So there's lots of coverages that you guys have that you did not have before, that maybe you'll never need, but you didn't have to pay for it. It's just in there. And there's a detailed slide on here that highlights some of that. Claims coordination. Mr. Alexander will know his claims adjusters by name. Jennifer does all the work comp claims, which you probably already know her. And Sarah Hudson does all of the property liability claims. So you have one of those, it's a dedicated unit. They just do NASB pool claims. We have one property adjuster who you have already met, Maurice Anderson, who actually does physical inspections, and he's phenomenal. So those three people dedicated to just the public schools. There is a nurse case manager, nurse case hotline for work comp, which I'm not sure if you're using, but if you're not using it, I encourage you to use it simply because you don't have to fill out the Form 50 anymore. It just goes right into the nurse fills it all out, it's online, it's really slick. Customized loss control. We have 6 retired superintendents who visit your districts every year. They kind of go through the buildings with a watchful eye. There's no hardcore, you have to spend $50,000 to correct this, or you're not gonna be considered a safe school district or anything like that. They just report on safety issues and things they know, and they interact and give you good advice. Those 6 retired superintendents also act as ambassadors for our superintendents. So they help them with budgets, they help them get stuff from the Department of Ed. They're a great resource. Also, ALICAP has what's called Safe Schools online safety training. EMC has it as well. They copied after we purchased it. But that's a great online safety training for the teachers and for students, etc. So use that. We found it to be incredibly useful with lowering your workers' compensation mod and that sort of thing. Within 90 days, so we've ordered your building appraisal, so Kroll and Company, who used to be Duff and Phelps, who used to be American Appraisal, will come in and give you a replacement cost per year for all of your buildings. And that cost is just built into the premium. You will have that appraisal put online, and you will be at full replacement cost. That's primarily, we do do that primarily for basis of premium and not so much for coverage, because the pool doesn't limit your building or contents values or your, a claim based on your value. We have $400 million per occurrence, so you're okay. We do not do endorsements and invoices, which is a great thing for superintendents and for business managers. You call us up, add a bus, Daniel adds the bus, send it back out to you, put it on your portal, and your coverage is there. We don't do invoices and endorsements and paper, all that back and forth and collect money back and forth. We just wait until next renewal, and then you'll get all of your exposures billed again for the next 12 months. We don't retro back or anything like that. It's why they have a 6% expense ratio. The membership portal, Daniel will talk about, that's a huge advantage. And then the members on the pool. So the surplus and everything goes back to you guys. I put a copy and just put a little slide next to this that shows the rate increases in the dividends. This last 2 or 3 years has been a monster for the insurance industry, and specifically property. So the hurricanes and the wildfires and all of the catastrophic events that have been going on across the country don't help matters either. Daniel and I took a trip to London, visited with all 9 syndicates who write the property for the pool, and we got rave reviews on how we adjust claims, how we're handling our convective storm exposures, how we're teaching our districts to put EPDM roofs on there with 20-year warranties, and how we're staying out of that layer that they don't want us to be in. So we only got a 20% increase this year, which was, I've never had to deliver that kind of a renewal ever to the pool. Kansas was at 35, and Michigan and some of the other ones were higher. But because we're in a state with convective storm, it's bad. And that was all driven by, you know, a hard market capacity. Reinsurance markets pulled out about 4 or 5 years ago, and then supply and demand took over, and values went up, and yeah. So, I'm gonna let Daniel talk about the membership portal, which is an advantage for the staff and.
So the last couple of years, NASB and myself worked together to create a more modern portal for the members to view information, access documents, that kind of thing. So it's just alicap.org. You log in, same login information for the, what am I trying to say?
It's when you register for an
Yeah,
event or
same-
something
the
through
same-
NASB,
yeah,
it's the same thing.
Yeah, same thing. So you log in through there, pulls up a dashboard. I just took screenshots just because I couldn't put the whole thing on there. But essentially it just has the dashboard with all the different items. There'll be like 4 boxes, just kind of says, you know, claims, finance, coverage, and loss control. And it kind of gives you just a brief overview on the dashboard. The My Documents tab, obviously pretty popular for your coverage memo, your auto ID cards, treasury bonds, your property appraisal, that's where you go. And then also under coverage, which I circled, just has, you know, all the buildings, contents, inland marine items, vehicles, and you can export lists to Excel straight from there. And then this next tab, under the finance tab, is historical dividends, and this is the Ashford information. You guys joined September 1st of 1990, so you built up some ownership. You guys joined online in August, and the figures on the right, the left value is the total dividends returned to members all time, and the right figure is the total dividends you guys have received over the past 33 years, and that's just for being a board component member. And then that graph below just kind of shows year by year how those dividends were distributed.
And you'll see that over time, now it'll grow, so that the 17,211 is the percentage of the 1.5. The 18,581 is your percentage of 2.6. So each year they declare a dividend, your ownership is about 0.6% of surplus. So whatever the pool surplus is, if the pool surplus today is, $6 million or $10 million, you own 0.6% of that. So whatever surplus is, now that you're paying in for the property liability side, your percentage of ownership is gonna go up. So you'll see more, you'll see larger dividends off of larger premiums, of course. Just some of the disadvantages, and I don't like to think these are disadvantages, but they need to be pointed out. It is a long-term commitment, so it's not just 3 years and then in and out. You guys have realized by being a member of Work Comp Only, what a huge advantage it is by getting $200 and some thousand in dividends off of one line of coverage. That's why we tell districts, stay in for the long haul. You're gonna be getting lots. You're gonna be building up more. If you leave the pool, you give up all of that ownership and all of your ownership to the other members. So you lose that, and we've had one leave, and they came groveling back 3 years later and wanted to come back, and we said, we can't. I mean, they had a big loss. It was too expensive for them to come back. They had to stay with BMC for another 5 years until that loss fell off. And then they came back and they lost that $181,000 in dividends that they had built up. So they learned the lesson. We are governed by what's called the Intergovernmental Risk Management Act. It says, and that's the act that all of us pools operate under. It says pools are accessible. So we are accessible. Essentially though, we took that risk of assessment, which no public entity wants to, nobody wants to, put their farm on the line or put your assets on the line to come back and assess the district for losses later. So we took that risk every year and we transferred that risk to an insurance company and we just pay premium for a policy to take that assessment exposure away. So it is accessible, it's in the law, but that's how we transferred it, how we got rid of it. The procedure to exit, not necessarily a disadvantage, but different. If you want to leave the pool after your 3rd year, you write a letter to the NASB or to the insurance department and say, I want to get out. The insurance department then looks at the financial impact that Beatrice would have on the rest of the members of the $32 million budget, and they'll say, doesn't have a financial impact, they can go. It was put in there as a protection for if the GNS wanted to come together and form a pool and take all of their, money out, well, that's gonna hurt the rest of them who joined a long time ago. So they put that in there as a protection. We've never had the insurance department tell us, no, somebody can't join or can't leave. This is just, I'm not gonna go over this graph in detail, however, this is kind of how we're structured, similar to how an insurance company is structured. The yellow boxes are the school's deductible. So the frequency of losses is the horizontal line, and that's the bus pit windshields and lost musical instruments, that kind of thing. The severity is the Norris tornado, Windsor Pilger tornado, that's the severity line going vertical. So the yellow boxes are your deductible. Of all the insurance coverage that the pool provides for all lines of care, you have 2 deductibles. $500 for property and at $2,500 for the school board liability, which protects you guys. The pink box are the pool's retention. So that's what the pool retains for every line of coverage that's in those columns. So the first column is the property. The inland marine, that's anything that floats 1,000 feet away from the building. And comp and collision for vehicles. So that's what's considered the definition of property. That has a $500 per occurrence deductible. So that has a $350,000 retention that the pool retains per loss. The next one is general liability, third-party negligence. So you guys get, something happens, you're proven negligent, you pay no deductible, the pool pays up to $350,000. School board errors and omissions, same thing, we have a $350,000 retention that the pool pays. Auto liability, same. Crime, we actually have had a loss. Most districts only purchase about $50,000 worth of crime coverage, and that covers employee dishonesty, embezzlement, theft, things like that. We had a loss where a school treasurer, business manager, put her husband on the payroll. He never worked for the school, and this went on for 4 to 5 years. It ended up about $400,000. And so we broke the loss up into those occurrences at different times, and we're able to cover that up to that 400,000 for that district, because we have $1 million. The pool paid the first 50,000. At that time, it was 25, but, so we got it covered and we paid it for that.
Vandalism be in that category?
Vandalism is property, yeah. And then workers' compensation, statutory coverage, teacher gets hurt, any employee gets hurt, has to go, have to go to the, required by law, state statute, go to the doctor, get fixed up. We have to pay that bill. So we pay the first 350,000 of every one of those losses. So in those pink boxes are what NASB or what LCAP pays, with the school district. We get that out of the premiums that we collect on September 1st. So our budget is $32 million. The insurance company that's capping that $17 million off to the right, or we call that our claims fund or our loss fund. We take $17 million out of the budget and we put that in this investment account. And then we buy insurance to cap it so that we never have to go back out to a district and collect any more money than that amount. That starts earning investment income right away. That's what we get to give back to the districts in the form of dividends, because that number is capped. We can never go deep, so all of that is dividend money. So that 17 million sits there, and then we have a wind and hailstorm that goes across the state. School district pays 500, and that we take 350,000 out of that 17 million, pay that up to the 350. Lloyd's of London, who's this green layer, the reinsurance layer is the next, they pay the next, up to the next, up to the next, up to the 400 million. So the most LCAP is responsible for in a one per occurrence loss is 350,000. So as that 17 million depletes over time, and we're using that money to pay all these losses, whatever we don't use in claims, we get to give back to the districts. So about the second year, the actuarial report comes in, and she gives us an actuarial number of exactly what that budget is gonna look like, or what the year is gonna pan out. Property claims close out right away. We know what property costs, there's no tails on liability. We know what that is. Liability claims, we can reserve those to what they need to be, et cetera. Actuary comes back and says that 17 million is so high, probably should be more like 15 million. That 2 million goes directly to surplus, and then they use that to declare the dividend. So we're only using what we need. We're not, and so districts are, oh, wow, we got a 20% increase. Well, yeah, but we collected 17 million that we probably won't. We probably don't need that. It'll probably come back to you in the form of surplus and dividends in the future. But we have to collect what the insurance company tells us to put in that fund, or else they won't. We're gonna have a gap with that insurance excess of that. So when Norris had their tornado, the first column, they paid the first 500, the pool paid 350,000, Lloyd's paid the next 650 up to $1 million, Star Specialty came in, and they were the only carrier at that time, and they paid up to the $32 million. Norris only had a $27 million blanket building and contents schedule when they joined the pool. After the appraisal, we bumped them up to 30. When they had the loss, we paid out more than $32 million and put them back in their position, because we have a $400 million per occurrence limit. So that's kind of how that structure works. Any questions on this graph? It's how insurance companies, it's all reinsurance, it's exactly the same way insurance companies are. So some of the broader coverage, blanket, we have the 400 million, the deductible. We're seeing ACV on roofs over 15 years old from employers. So employers, if you have a roof over 15 years old and you have a hailstorm and you have that endorsement, it's costing districts a ton of money, because they need to replace it and fix the functional damage, and yet they're saying it's not replacement cost. So they're doing a lot of things to get away from having to pay these catastrophic wind and hailstorms. Building ordinance and debris removal, we have 50 million. At the Norris tornado, we hauled 3,000 tons of steel off of that site, which is debris removal. We used over $2 million to get the site all cleaned up. That's a limit that's in excess of your statement of values. It's in excess of what your replacement cost of your buildings are. The ordinance, if you didn't have buildings that were sprinklered, that were built before sprinklers, now you have to sprinkle them. Well, you don't have it wasn't in your statement of values to replace that because you didn't have it. But building ordinance will replace it and give you that additional, the additional limit, the additional monies for that. Extra expense, 25 million. Interestingly enough, after a loss, after you have a tornado or a loss like that, everything goes up. So steel costs more, expediting, we had to expedite boilers and HVAC equipment and all kinds of stuff to the site. It cost us a lot of extra expense, but we got it there and we used this money to get it. The loss happened on May 2004. Kids were back in school in September and the loss was closed in 12 months, which is unprecedented. So they did a national video on the story and it was kind of a cool story. It was good for us because all the agents had said we were gonna go bankrupt because we didn't have $32 million of surplus in the bank to pay for the loss. We got to say we're still here. It didn't bankrupt us. We do have earthquake and flood, or building course of construction. So if you're doing builder's risk projects, you're doing course of construction, we have 25 million. You don't have to buy separate builder's risk unless you're building a new building. Earthquake and flood, I think you guys are kind of on a line, if I'm not mistaken. So we have $50 million worth of earthquake and flood coverage. We also have a 100-year floodplain. We have a Zone A 15 million, so you don't have to go to the National Flood Insurance Program to get any flood coverage. Replacement costs, if you have 2 or more buses damaged in one accident, we have had a bus barn fire with 3 buses. So if you have, and we bought them all new buses. I like to say that it's weird, we're gonna really be hard pressed to go out and find a 1971 IHC 60 light passenger, so we just brought them. Sexual abuse molestation coverage up to 5 million. There was a time after the Archdiocese issues and some of those things that insurance companies were pulling back their abuse molestation limit, but we still have our 5 million. And we have the limit of 5 million because the Nebraska State Tort Claims Act says you can be sued for 1 million per person, 5 million per occurrence. After the Seward bus accident, there were some state senators down there, the legislature tried to get that to 2.6 and 3.7 and push that up some. With that being said, if that happened, we would go out and we would just buy that limit to whatever needs to protect you, and you don't have to run around the 189 local agents and tell them that they gotta go talk to the school about increasing their limits. We would just do it all. So treasurer's bond requirements, I'm not sure if you have separate treasurer's bonds, but you don't have to do that anymore with ALICAP. We have put treasurers, the school treasurer is embedded, the position is embedded into the policy form, and we just do certificates. So Daniel does all county certificates for every district, saves some districts, couple thousand dollars, and depending upon what limit they're buying in that bond. That bond limit is $1 million. So don't have to buy that anymore. Tell us what counties you need to, that you get funds from, and we post them on the portal, and you pull them off and send them to the county. They're all pretty used to getting them by now. And then pollution coverage, we did have a member that had a $3 million mold remediation issue. So we went out and procured pollution coverage for every district at $1 million for like $175. It was really cheap when we did it. The last slide is the Board of Trustees. Feel free to call any of them. Ask them about ALICAP experience, if you have any questions. Most of them there are a few new ones that are on the board now. But for the most part, I think a lot of them have years of experience with us. You saw the annual report. I just wanted to share that. It shows the team. It shows everyone who's the board members, the loss control reps, NASB staff, myself, Pat, Daniel, the claims people are on there. A list of all the members are in there, so you can see if the other district or other members in your conference are in there. The growth of the pool, dividends. The cool thing is, this is the total cost of risk graph, and this is my favorite, partly because I do it. The loss fund and the dividends makes up 52%, so that $17 million makes up 52% of our budget. The 41% is the excess insurance or the reinsurance that we have to pay out on September 1, and we never get that money back. I mean, that just, it's just, oh, you know, so now, granted, they're providing a capped aggregate and stuff for us, but the more we can self-insure and the less we pay them in insurance premiums, the more we can give back to the members and the less we all have to pay. So I like to see that loss fund dividend number much higher and the excess insurance premium a lot lower, but the 6% is phenomenal, so they're managing it really well. And then it gives you the number of claims and incurred dollars by claim. Any questions? It's a long-term commitment. That's the one thing. But I'm glad that you joined. I'm not, you know, I'm sorry that your agent had lost his appointment, but we're glad you're in for all lines. We had 11, I think, work comp only members that are still grandfathered into the pool for work comp only. And slowly we have 11 left. Now we have 10 left. So, any questions? Anything I can answer?
I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's been when you open that letter and you see your insurance coverage for your school is going to be dropped on August 1, sure it's been phenomenal to work quickly and help us get on. So.
Well, I was gonna say, the other thing I promised Jason was, you guys came into the pool at a not so opportune time. And it was kind of forced on you. You had a loss, you had this hail damage that occurred. We were able to mitigate that $2.9, $2.7 million loss down to $1 million. And then I told Jason after 3 years, and I've done this for probably 4 or 5 districts who have in the same situation. In 3 years, as you do really well with losses, we're gonna re-rate your premium. And if that loss fund calculation is based on that 5-year average and that $1 million is in there. So it's probably a lot more than you were paying or should be paying. So after 3 years, we're gonna re-rate it and hopefully, I've done that for a couple others and we said, we'll just leave it where it is. Because they had a couple bad tragedies after that, so we just kept it at where it was. But hopefully in 3 years, we can get it, we can decrease it.
And quite honestly, your 20%, I was just working on property insurance on something in Colorado. They project the 20%. Also, I think that's probably going to be pretty standard
Well,
this year.
and the Colorado school pool out there, I think it's called Colorado Special District, they didn't have their bucket filled. So they're buying 400 million, let's say, but they didn't have the 25 million, excess of 25 million layer filled yet, so that was gapped. They had a carrier that was picking them up excess of that and below that, but they couldn't find anybody to write that piece. It's a scramble out there.
Yeah.
We were smart to go to London and sit and face-to-face negotiate, tell them how we do things and how we handle losses in Nebraska and how Maurice is fantastic and so.
Nebraska's always better.
You know what? We're the lowest litigated state in the country.
Well, and I was gonna say they're number 4 in loss because of the wildfires.
Oh, yeah. And we have to really pray for a really good hurricane season.
Yeah.
Because if the carriers are allowed to make money through this hurricane season, we might see some relief. We did see some relief on the cyber liability piece this year, which you guys are keeping your cyber separate, but we were able to see a decrease of almost $100,000 in the cyber because of all the things the districts are doing now, you know, with the.
Well, and I was like, I have attended virtually every Alley Camp meeting, because I just like the presentation that you guys do. I think I did hear you last
At
year.
the summer
But
workshop?
it very interesting, and I enjoy, I like risk management, Doris not so much.
Doris is over it.
It was very impressive.
All right, well, when you have the loss, we'll be there.
I appreciate that.
All right,
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a safe trip back. Thanks for
we
being here.
will.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting us.
Bet. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now we're going to learn about the sale and disposal of school property. Mr. Alexander?
Yeah, okay. Rhonda, come on up and I'll just let you sit up here and we'll cover this, and if there's questions, shouldn't take too long, but essentially, as we start to look at equipment that we have on grounds, or as we start to transition to the new building, there's going to be equipment that comes up that we are wanting to dispose of. That's already happening, as Rhonda has joined us as Buildings and Grounds Maintenance Supervisor. She has come up with a list of things that technically we don't need anymore, we don't use anymore, but somebody else might have a use for it. So policy number 3090, basically, state statute says that anything that's paid for with public funds, the public has to have the opportunity to purchase if you want to sell or get rid of it. And so we have a host of items that Rhonda and her crew have put together that we are ready to take to sale. And we wanted to run those by you real quickly and show you what they are, and then explain that we will put these items up for auction. So that's what we wanted to do. And real quick, like Rhonda, if you want to run through those, we have a lawnmower to start with.
Yeah, we have a zero-turn Encore Z-Series lawnmower. It's functional, it runs, the hydraulics were just redone, and we'd like to put that up for bid. And it is a little older, but we got a donation last year from Toro, and I was blessed with driving that for the first time. It was pretty sweet, but we don't need it, and it's just been sitting in our lawnmower shed for quite some time. This is the 2003 Chevy Silverado. There is a transmission issue and a water pump that needs to be replaced. It's been sitting in the back for quite some time, and it's just something that obviously we haven't used for quite some time, and just would really like to get it up for auction as well. I like to keep things neat and clean, and just trying to clean up some of the things. Obviously, this one, it's got quite a few miles on it, but it could be functional. The only thing wrong with it, it started right up when Mike took a look at it. The only thing wrong with it is the brake lines just need to be replaced. And we just, I mean, with the limited staff that was there at the time before me, they just didn't have the time to do any kind of repairs on it. And now I have Mike in there that can do all the repairs that we need on any other vehicle. Couple of the Husky mowers. We have one that has a blade on it with no mower deck, and then another one that has a mower deck, and these have just been sitting in the bus barn too, just collecting dust. And then that is a 10-ton snap-on jack that we would like to get rid of as well. Just the seals need to be replaced. There is more, I just haven't had much time to put together anything else, but we're trying to get all the people up with their permits for CDL driving, so.
So this is gonna be an online auction,
Yeah.
and will there be reserves on these?
Possibly, I haven't got that far yet. It was gonna be put on our Facebook page, Marketplace.
So in accordance with the policy, such disposal may be private sale, auction, trade-in, or by taking bids and selling to the highest or most responsible bidder. But any sale of school property is contingent on approval by the board by a vote of at least 2/3 of the members of the Board of Education in the regular meeting. So we wanted to kind of explain this policy, and I think it's been a while. I don't know that we've used it since I've been here. But as we start, this is a good place for us to start that process of eliminating some older things and following the policy. So we wanted you to know that we'll be bringing this to you the next week. And then probably one of the things we're gonna have to discuss as we start to move into the new school is how we want to do this. I don't know that you guys wanna see every desk and chair or that we might put up for auction in the future. So this was a good reminder for us to bring to you a few items this way, and then we can talk about this policy moving forward if we wanna change it up a little bit to make the sale of other items from the elementary schools easier.
Yeah,
I think I've only remembered like public auctions. I don't think we've ever done it.
Yeah.
We've done it online.
The last time we did it, the online auction sites were probably not even a thing.
Right.
Because I think we did it with the police department, you know, it was kind of a joint effort thing
Oh.
down by the West Barn, so.
Okay. Rhonda, thank you. Appreciate your work.
Is there a way, you know, speaking of in the future with the schools, is there a way to just kind of do a blanket, you know, items, contents that are deemed saleable versus a list, you know?
Yeah. I think there is, and I think what we,
Somehow to word that, you know?
yeah, we might have to reword our policy a little bit in order to be able to do that, but yes, there is. Which would make it much easier for you and probably much easier for us as well, to be able to get rid of that.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Doris, try to quell your excitement. I know
It
you're.
just looks like the excitement's building all
Yeah,
evening.
yeah.
Now we're gonna have a 2023-2024 budget preview with Mr. Alexander.
Okay, I will try and be quick. I appreciate your patience this evening in getting through all this. Now that you've seen the 6%, voted for the 6%, I want to be able to show you a little bit about what the budget proposal that I will be presenting to you for approval looks like. So as we start in with the budget, there's always objectives. The objectives for this particular budget season include explaining goals. I want to be able to explain the goals to you for the 23-24 budget, quick review of historical financial background, discuss factors of budget proposal, look at the expenditures and receipt sides of the proposed budget. The tax levy is obviously a big part of it, and then finally, look at the budget resolution that you will have to approve coming in the month of September. So the goals for this budget cycle, the first and foremost goal will always be there. It was last year, financing an educational program that supports the best interest of the students attending Beatrice Public Schools. That's my job, that's your job, that's always gonna be our number one goal. Adjusting general fund and building funds to accommodate current and future building needs. This began really in 2021, 2020 and 21 with the discussion about the new school. And so that's a continual moving piece right now as we continue the construction project. And then finally, maintain the appropriate revenue stream in light of the new foundation aid revenue cap, LB 243. This is important to grasp, and I appreciate you guys in how you listened intently and looked at that decision from the perspective of preparing for the future. So that revenue cap is huge, and it's been a learning experience for a person. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I felt like I was starting all over again this year. So I appreciate your attendance to all of it as well. So as we start to delve in, just a little bit of quick history. You can see our enrollment at Beatrice Public Schools has always been around that 2,000 mark, maybe up a little bit, maybe down a little bit, but in 2022-23, we were at 2,100. We're just over that now as we start the new school year. So enrollment history remains static. That's the point of this slide, is that when I first came here, I heard people saying our enrollment's dropping, our enrollment's dropping, our enrollment's dropping. Well, it's not. It's remained fairly static. There's fluctuation in every school. So that brings us to the Tax Equity Educational Opportunity Support Act, otherwise known as TEOSA. And a lot of people think TEOSA is extremely complicated, but it really comes down to needs, a school district's needs, minus their resources equals their state aid. Now, it's changed a little bit this year with the foundation aid and every district getting $1,500 per student, okay? So it's a little bit different, but the formula still stands that way in terms of computation of how much a school district's going to receive. Essentially, underneath the needs side, you have several factors there that make up your needs. Everything from poverty to limited English language proficiency, to summer school, to special receipts, to distance education, all those items make up the need side of the formula. On the resources side, you really have very limited resources. You have your valuations times your local tax rate, or LER, and there's 3 places where schools get funding. We get funding from the state level, which in the next slide you will see has been decreased for many years. We get funding from the federal level, and then the other place we get funding is property taxes. Those are the 3 places we get funding, okay? So that takes us to the state aid history at Beatrice Public Schools. The reason the blue arrow is there, that was the year 2010-11. That was a significant year in the legislature when they realized that if the legislature started to take and reduce the amount of state aid that schools were given, so the state started reducing the amount that they were giving schools, as property valuations were increasing, that would be less of a commitment the state would have to make, but more of a commitment the local taxpayers would have to make. However, the narrative has been created that schools are overspending, schools are overspending. That's what we've heard from our policymakers for years, and that's not the case. The case is our budgets have increased about 2.5% and our spending about 2.5%. That's a cost of living increase. The reality is the state's has increased more than that, 4 to 5% and even more. But the purpose of this slide is to show that state aid has decreased. This is the first time in several years that we've at least maintained a whopping $5,626 that we get in state aid this year. So, additional state aid. So, this just shows, those are the numbers from the previous graph, so we can skip over that fairly quickly. But this is the slide that is so key, because all of us got these yellow postcards in June. And the pink ones are gonna go out shortly. But we all got these yellow postcards in June. This is mine. I'm gonna keep a hold of it, and I'm taking it to the joint public hearing with me, because it specifically states that my property value went up. It's worth more money. It went from $220,160 to $244,360. So my property's worth more. And everybody's property went up because the valuations went up. And so this postcard tells you what it went up. Overall, valuations in Gage County for Beatrice Public Schools increased 13%, so you'll see that more later on. But you can see the trend. Just like in the state aid, as the state aid started to go down, the valuation started to go up. So the monkey got shifted from the state's responsibility to fund schools to the property taxpayers' responsibility, okay? Those are just the numbers that attach to the graph, so we can skip over that. I want to talk to you a little bit before we delve into the budget about why it's important and the increases in expenses that we have. And to Eric's question in the special hearing, these are increases that we know we have coming in the 23-24 or 24-25 school year. Last year, we had to make, and we will continue to have to make, a significant contribution to wage increases across the district. That's 85 to 90% of our budget. So $770,000 of wage increases will impact the 23-24 budget as we prepare for it. Additional bus routes. We know that there's a 3% increase, and we're coming to the end of our contract. After this year, we will renegotiate a new contract with the bus company next year, and guess what? It probably won't go down.
They also added a bus route this year for free.
Yes, they gave us an additional bus route this year for free, so that was good. The curriculum software updates that we're looking at, we're estimating $33,000, but we also know, Dr. Nielsen has been good about keeping me informed, that next year, the MAP assessment that we are required to give to our students by the state of Nebraska has traditionally been paid for by the state of Nebraska. Next year, that responsibility will become ours. Question, do you think the requirement or the unfunded mandate will go away? No. We'll be responsible for picking up the tab of the MAP assessment. Textbook updates, we need to update our K-8 math and our K-5 English language learner textbooks. approximately $500,000 a year for the next 2 years. District repairs, just in the average, run somewhere between $75,000 to $100,000 a year. I'm gonna talk to you at the end of this discussion about a van, because we did just get word that we can purchase one from Premier Chevrolet. They've got one that all we have to do is place the order. You've approved that it was approved on November 14th, 2022. However, we haven't been able to get one, so we are looking at getting a van. All those things listed below that: HVAC, roofing, parking lots, water heaters, fencing at the athletic park. These are all upkeep-on facilities that our costs we continue to see, and they're just general maintenance things. We are in a situation where the field turf is going to have to be replaced at the House of Orange. It's been there now, I think, 12 years. That'd be 12, 13 years, and it's a safety concern at this point. So that's something that we're working on. Gus has been, he's had some tests run on it, and we'll bring that information to you, but that's a $600,000 expense. So bottom line is, our approximate estimations for increases in expenditures in the next 2 years is somewhere around $2,034,000, and a lot of that is primarily this year that we'll have to be looking at. So just wanted to explain that. So looking at this next slide, this is the hearing notice, and this is the hearing notice that basically sets the floor level of where we're at. So that LC2 computation number you see is a combination of the general fund and the building fund added together. So if I can point this without shaking too much, this number right here is the general fund tax asking that would be at the base level. This is the building fund tax asking and the QC Puff. It's almost like the QC Puff has gone away in the discussion now. It's non-bonded indebtedness, so they don't even really factor it in anymore. The factor is really your general fund and building fund, and what that total tax asking is gonna be and where you fall. So our general fund and building fund amount will be $15,526,835. That's the same number you saw in the LC2 document, okay? Essentially, the difference from last year is $998,460 for the building fund and the general fund. Now folks, here's the deal. I just showed you $2 million of expenses we have. So asking for $998,460 isn't gonna quite cut what we anticipate our expenses to be. So the reality is, if we look at it, again, on the next slide, back to the general fund and building fund floor to ceiling concept, if we would have stayed at this number, we wouldn't have been able to cover our expenses for the coming year. So that vote in the special hearing was very important. However, I will tell you, we do not need to be here, okay? We'll be fine. We do not need to go that high either. So where do I think we need to be? The next slide kind of points that out. And this is what I would propose to you for the general fund and building fund tax request on the basis of next year. We'll break this down a little further in other slides, but our budget authority has been set by the state at $33,177,327. That's an 8% increase in operational budget, okay? So we see an 8% increase. However, our tax rate, because valuation's going up, our general fund levy will drop from 90 cents to 88 cents, which is a 3% drop in the general fund. This, again, is what I'm proposing for you for next year. The building fund operating budget is set at $5,178,100, okay? We will be asking for $2,175,151, which keeps us at the 13.9 cents that we asked last year. You can't go any higher than that, so that's as high as we can go. So it's a 0% change in tax rate, and it's a 10% decrease in operating budget, all right? The QC Puff, again, this is we have it, I have it, the budget at $1,790,781, because we have to make principal and interest payments, but then next year in 2025, we have to make a one-time $1.6 million bullet payment to pay that off, and it'll be gone in 2025. So that line will be gone, but we have to tax into that $353,535 to make sure we make our principal and interest payment and put a little more money into the QC Puff. That sets our QC Puff at 0.02 cents, which is where it's been the past several years. It's a 13% reduction in the tax rate. It's a 56% increase in the budget, and that's because I have to start preparing now, building the budget to be able to make that payment in 25. Okay? So overall, what does this mean?
When's that QC Puff paid off? When does that fall off?
2025, December.
We're close.
December 25 will be when we have to make our bullet payment.
And then it's done.
And then it's done. And then that will go away. So the total in operational budget, general fund, building fund, QC Puff is $40,146,208. We would be asking for $16,313,534 total tax dollars. Our levy would be reduced to $1.45308 total levy, which last year was $1.75. That's a 3% reduction in our levy rate. So essentially, we're reducing 3 cents off the levy because of the valuation increases. Now this column over here, I didn't realize how important this was, but you remember the state authorized us an 8% increase in operating budget authority. Our tax rate is only going up 7%. Okay? Couple of things to note. That means our general fund and building fund levy will be $15,959,999. So in the eyes of the LC2, getting back to that document, that will be the number that would be in there as what we're asking for taxes. The difference from what you saw previously, our base to where I'm proposing that we be at, is an additional $433,164. So that brings us to $1,431,624 of revenue that we're asking to collect from taxes. Still doesn't cover our expenses. So you may be looking at me saying, how can we do that? Well, that's where the SPED reimbursement fills the gap. Okay? And that's what we're counting on from the state. Their commitment from LB 583 is increasing that SPED reimbursement up to 80%. That will fill our gap for this year. So, again, trying to create a visual for you, this is what I came up with, is that this was our base. This is what the state said we could grow. This is our ceiling, this is our max, and I'm proposing that we be at $15,959,999. Building fund and general fund. That would be our tax, and that's where the focus is at this point. So that's what I have built as a budget right now. I want to take you through some other things. I'm going to walk you through the hearing notice explanation so you understand that. I'm going to be very quick on this because you've seen it enough times. You can go ahead and shift Danielle to the next one. Basically, what this does is break out all the funds that we have and tell you what the actual disbursements and transfers were in 21, 22. Those are actual numbers because we have those from the audit. This is an estimated column as to what we think we'll spend this year. And then what I'm proposing next year is this number right here. And that number right there in the general fund is the same number you saw earlier, $33,177,327. That is the number that's certified by the Department of Education that we have for budget authority. Then across, it shows you the necessary cash reserve. I have at $618,333. The total available resources being $20,148,660. And our total personal and real property tax requirement in the general fund being $13,784,848. There's a lot of numbers on here that I could go through, but this is the notice that would be going in the paper. So I'm going to keep going and try and get you out of here sooner rather than later. You've seen the section D of the LC2, but this breaks it down even further. Again, the NDE certified us $27,343,790. We have the ability to access our prior unused budget authority, which is that amount, 533,537, which added together brings us to that number. And then when you factor in our special education, general fund operating expenses, including the 5.3 million sped expenses, we're at $33,177,327 of total budgetary expenses in the general fund. So the expenditure side has to balance with the revenue side. So then the question becomes, where do we get our revenue? Well, as I said earlier, there's three places that you get it. Your state and federal, your state aid, and your beginning cash balance that you have on hand. So we estimate our beginning cash balance to be that amount, $8,505,000. Other revenues from state and federal, excluding state aid, is $5,431,445. We factor in our state aid, that brings us to $19,392,479. And then we factor in our property taxes, this is general fund only, at $13,784,848, and that brings us to the balance of $33,177,327, just like the expenditure side. So you have your state and federal funds, you have your state aid, and then you have your property taxes. So the expenditures balance with the revenue. You can take a look at our budget authority, certified by the state from past years. It just fluctuates depending on what your needs are. It goes back to the TIOSA formula. When your needs are greater, you get more budget authority. They recognize that from the previous year, and you get more budget authority to help with your needs. Okay? So that's just history on that. A lot of times we're asked about our historical revenue and expenditures. Revenue is the green line. Expenditures are the red line. So you can see that never really in Beatrice history have they overspent their budget except for maybe 1 year. And I'm not sure, that would be 2012-13, and there's probably a good reason for it. But traditionally, we've always been pretty close to what our actual revenue is. Our expenditures have met that. Or just a little bit, our expenditures have been a little bit under. These are just the numbers that attach to that previous graph. A lot of times we get asked about our cost per pupil. Again, I'm a visual person, so all those numbers are great, but when we put them to graphical formula and we find out that historically, Beatrice has also, that blue line is Beatrice, the red line is the state average. So we have always been under the state average of the per pupil expenditures in this district. Now you can look at that as a good thing, or you can look at it as a bad thing. So that just depends on what your perspective is. For me, I would say it would be nice for us to catch up, because I think that's doing our students justice in comparison to every other student in the state of Nebraska. So certification of valuations was received on August 21st. Basically, as I told you earlier, valuations went up extensively. Our total value went up to $1,560,643,546. That's a 13% increase from last year, and you'll see it on the hearing notice coming up. When you break it out into valuations, this is how it breaks out. 54. Agriculture pays 35.2%. Centrally assessed is 5.3%, and personal property is 5.2%. That's the breakout of how the valuations were this year. Okay? That's just another graph to show the same thing. So we'll go through. So when we talk about general and building fund tax levy history, there used to be a day when school boards didn't have levy limits. They didn't have revenue caps. They didn't have expenditure limits. And good, bad, or indifferent, there used to be a time where the levy in Beatrice was $1.17. Over the course of time, through state statutes and the adjustments the legislature has made, our levy limit is $1.05. That's where we've been. It's pretty close to where I'm proposing we're going to be. But that is essentially where we have been over the course of the previous years. What's that?
The high school would have been on it in 2000,
Yes. Yep.
so that's why the levy was higher.
Yep, and the high school, yep, the bond issue would have been on there, from the high school as well. So those are just the numbers that attach. So that brings us to the special hearing notice, and I wanna take a few minutes to walk you through this as best I can, so everybody explains. And what it does is it compares 22-23 to 23-24. What I'm proposing for you. You also have this in front of you if it's hard to read up there. So essentially, when we start, we look at last year's general fund. Property tax request was $12,590,909. That equated to a 90.90459 levy. Okay? This year, we're proposing $13,784,848, which equates to an 88-cent levy, 88.3280. That, as I've mentioned before, that's a 3% deduction in the tax rate. It's an 8% increase in operating budget, but it's a 3% reduction in tax rate. In terms of the building fund, going down to the purple, so that's color coordinated purple. Last year, we asked for $1,937,466, which was right at the 13.9 cents by contract with our lender for our building project. We remain at the 13.9 cents, and that generates $2,175,151, which also is a 10% reduction in our budget, so that's good. The qualified capital purpose undertaking fund, last year we asked for $361,277, which equated to 0.026096 cents. This year we're asking for $353,635, which equates to 0.022653 cents, a 13% reduction in the tax rate. So overall, when we get to the bottom of the page that will be in the newspaper, the total looks like this. Last year, we asked for we had a budget of $37,530,281. We asked for $14,889,652, and we had a tax levy of $1.75500. The proposal that I'm presenting to you tonight says we have an operating budget of $40,146,208 in those three funds. We asked for $16,313,534 total dollars, which makes our total tax levy $1,45308. That's a 3% reduction and a 7% overall total operating budget asking for taxes. So again, this column over here became it popped out at me so huge when I started working on the budget, because we've been told we can increase 8% operating budget. We're only asking for a 7% increase in tax asking. Total. That includes QC Pub. So again, that all breaks down like this in comparison to from last year to this year. 22-23, we were at 90 cents in the general fund. Next year, I'm proposing 88 cents. Last year, we were at 13.9 in the building fund. Be 13.9 this year in the building fund. QC Puff is at 0.26 last year, 0.22 this year. Again, that's a drop from a total levy of $1.75501 to $1.045308. That's a reduction overall of 3.030193 cents. When you break it out, and this is something that not a lot of people know, we have to collect 1% of our total tax collection goes to the county treasurer. So what this data shows you is that last year, on the basis of our tax collection, $125,909 of that went to the county treasurer. That's the way the law is. It's what we got to do. That right there is at least one teacher's salary and benefits. 23-24, that amount will be $137,848, and I see I forgot to add those two together and put them there. But, it's, those two numbers will equal up what our tax asking is, so I'm gonna fix that it'll be 13,784, 848 will be those two numbers, so, or plus that. So essentially, in the general fund, last year, we were at 12,465,000. Proposing in the general fund for next year, tax asking of 13,784,848. The difference is 1,319,848. Special building fund, you can see the difference is $237,685. These are just numbers that you've already seen, so I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on it. This is general fund tax collection history. Basically, it talks to you about the taxes that have been certified, the amount that's been collected, and the percent that's been collected. The importance of this graph is that because we ask for taxes, doesn't mean we're always going to get them. Sometimes they will eventually come, but sometimes it takes longer than when we actually need them to get there. So that's why it's important that we carry a healthy cash reserve. Questions?
I think, the big thing is, it's very evident, the reason for at least the increase in the operating, due to the one slide that shows, the staff wage increases, insurance increases. It's gonna continue, so I mean, it's no different than anybody else that's working with us, so.
Yeah. And just the school districts, we know they're all different, so there are different things happening around us and across the state, depending on the schools that they go to.
What was the, so obviously we could go up to that 6%, but what was the, the slide that showed our top and then our floor? What was the actual percentage that we're looking at?
From the base growth, it's 2.79%.
2.7.
Yep. So just under 3.
So again, like we talked about earlier, we're not asking for the full 6, we'd be potentially asking for the 2.73.
And I just want you to know that depending on what happens legislatively, depending on what happens valuation-wise, that number will always fluctuate in accordance to probably those 2 things. Whatever the state does and tells us we have to do, and then whatever valuations do. Valuations continue to go up. The first few years I was here, it was single-digit increases, and I think there was one year it went down a little bit. The last 2 years, it's been double-digit increases, and I don't foresee that going away real soon. It's all based on what people pay for property.
So you've done a great job.
Yes.
Very much appreciate this.
Well, I want you to understand what, and I try to come up with, this happened yesterday at about 4:30. Wow, I can show this way. And I'm a visual learner, so I hope it makes sense.
So what's the next steps with the budget process?
Good question. Okay. To everybody's dismay and mine as well, we will have to attend the joint public hearing, which is scheduled for September 18th. So I have to have one board member. State statute says this year one board member must attend. So we will have to attend the joint public hearing on the 18th at the courthouse. The next board meeting, the regular board meeting, I will take you through this again, which I know you're extremely excited about, just for any last questions, and I'll try to be expeditious as we do that. But if there's anything that you have questions about between now and then, I need to know, because I have to submit those numbers for the proposed budget to the county clerk by next Friday for the joint public hearing. Okay, so if there were any reason to make any changes, I need to know before I turn in that piece of paper. After the joint public hearing, we need to talk about the special hearing for approving the budget that you've seen and the tax hearing. So the budget, and there has to be a budget hearing that shows you the budget numbers that I gave you, and then the tax hearing that I gave you. So we've talked about the 19th, the 21st. we have some scheduling where not everybody can be present at those two meetings, at one of those two meetings, so we have another option to throw out to you. But before we get too much into that, I would just like to tell you that Friday, September 29th is when we have to have the budget submitted. So essentially, we have the joint public hearing, we have a special budget hearing and tax hearing to approve the budget and the tax hearing that has to come after that date. And then we submit the budget on the before the 29th, Friday the 29th. So, looking at the calendar, we've kicked out the idea of Tuesday, September 19th. We have 5 board members available that night. That's the night after the joint public hearing for the special hearing for the budget and the tax hearing. We talked about Thursday the 21st, which Thursday was not, the 21st was not really good. We had 4 to 5 members present there. So probably the next available date becomes Tuesday the 26th for our budget and tax hearing. That would have to be a special meeting. So my question is, would Tuesday the 26th be a better night to have everybody together?
I'm good.
I'm out.
Okay.
Could we do a noon meeting?
We can.
Would that work better?
I don't know if it'll work on the 26th, but noon typically would work. I'd have to check my.
I'm not certain we should do a budget meeting at noon.
Just in case you have public comment.
I find it interesting that they set this all up, and typically boards meet on that second Monday, don't they? And they set this all up, so that can never happen, that seems.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the ironic part about it is our September board meeting is the 11th, which is the second Monday, but the joint public hearing will be held to the 18th, so we can't really approve our budget and our tax at our September 11th meeting. That would be putting the cart before the horse, so we have to, according to statute, we have to wait till after that 18th point.
And you have to have it by the end of September.
Well, that's really awkward for city council. I mean, it's on the 18th.
Yeah.
And if they would have to attend that joint public hearing, I don't know what they do with their council.
Yeah. So those are kind of the options that we have.
So if we kept it on the 19th, we would have 5 board members. Is that enough?
When it comes to it's different than the 6%. That has to be 70% of the board.
That has to be like a super majority. The rest of it just has to be a majority.
Yeah, the budget hearing and the tax hearing just have to be a majority of the board members that are actually present. So the 19th, if we have 5 that are in, we can still go with that day. If that's okay with you. Okay, all right. Just a reminder that Wednesday, the 27th, is the area membership meeting, and we're planning to go to Nebraska City for that, which is held at the Harbor. Thank you. Never remember the name. So if you're interested, please shoot Danielle a message. We can go to that. They have a nice, ALICAP helps sponsor that. They have a nice couple sessions for board members to attend. I know that we have several board members that are receiving awards for moving up a level in their point values, so you get recognized for that, and it's a great dinner, so if you're interested, please let us know. Other than that, unless there's other questions, I'll let you be free. Thank you for your attention.
Apparently, there's no one here that wants to. No one here. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that the Board of Education at District 15 adjourn.
Second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. This meeting is adjourned.